Thanks everyone for being here. It's a real honor to share my work with all of you, and I really appreciate Tree offering the space for my launch. Tree was one of the first places that I read publicly, and you know, I think it was an invaluable experience testing out some of this work in public, in the open mic, and I think it's Tree does a great job of bringing along new writers. All right, so I'm going to actually start with Extinction. Artifact, the level Wa point. This stone flake still cuts as sharp as 30,000 years ago. On Earth, in a Paris suburb, it reveals the apex of Neanderthal cousins' craft. If we descend far down the spiral coil of our genealogical scale, we come from stone stock, Neolithic workers in cryptocrystalline mineral. Once, this napper of rock draped a caribou hide over bent knee to chip out an oval-shaped ring from hunk of chert stone, forming a circuit of scars, and with deft clip shear off a flake that looks surgical and modern, but isn't. It chills to dig and tear open the ground that lies between us, for like a swift runner who loses by margin of a leaf's breadth, this point, despite the look of skill and sapience, proves less durable, less certain than our own work. And that small gap, that separation, proved their undoing and our making. Extinct Americana, Miracinonyx, the American cheetah. And yes, the prairies did have a cheetah 10,000 years ago. In the history of American fauna, you were built for sudden haste, for the short burst across prairie flat to drag down your fleeing prey. The rocket cars on Bonneville Salt, a distant echo of your swift tempo. Crossing the plains south of Battleford, a herd of pronghorn kick up the dust as they start over lines of barbed wire and bound away. Despite alarm in the pits of their eyes, nothing alive can now chase them down. Were they spooked by some ghost called up from grassland boneyard? Pinhole Man. At Pinhole Cave, another grotto pun. A crook-backed man with erect penis scrimshawed haphazardly onto the side of a thick slab of rib. The hard bone mammalian armor, now playfully turned to an après-dîner canvas, where in thin cartoonish lines a lone dancer carouses in his mask. Our liminal atom, first root and seed, and all that untimely, unimagined woe to the woolly, hairy beast of field. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit here and do a couple of erotic poems. Kind of up to you guys whether they actually work or not. Last night, in Barcelona, where shadows linger in the corners and avenues run wide, we spent our final days and nights. Caught in the halo of street lamp cast through open shutters, your body glowed on the bed. You, moon-faced, white-cheeked, tossed your lank hair back like the mane of a Dakota mare. Your thighs, ripe winter melons, softly pliant under thrust and pull, our rude copy of Picasso's rude painting of a bull man astride his Ariadne that we'd seen earlier on the stone of gallery walls. With hardening breast and ring, your body worked against mine. We used everything we knew. When we lay back on the sheets, we could hear in the far distance the rumble of uncoupling freight. One last familiar gesture of hand running over loose curl of hip and flank, and then dark, sugared embrace of sleep. Although we met from time to time, it did not matter, for that night was when we said our farewell. Does the stone bear in the plaza still eat his mountain honey, careless of the stinging bees? Riverbank. Running along the stream's edge is a lip of ice the river licks at, ceaselessly, labial, smooth, and dripping. And thus, drop by drop, the steady work of a moist tongue melts ice away. See, it's a nice poem about spring. Okay, I'm going to do a couple poems here, and they attempt to do some excavation of sort of the lost histories of our land, our geography. Pictographic. Every year it becomes harder to locate the old red image amid rock-capped moss and lichen. Hazy, pale, and eroding away, it has become a rusty smudge. The canoe sways in waves, yet we need to find stillness to pick out the faded design. Then the pictogram's peculiar rabbit ears pop up as if it jumped clear of cover. Your ears still mark you. Company men once thought the sharp spurs satanic horns, named the place Devil's Lake, barred their Cree guides from setting up camp. And that familiar rhythm of place, return after return, was broken. But don't your ears still perk up with interest on hearing your name? Wissagichuk, great hair, con man, troublemaker, fool, and our hero? When people first built their canoes, who fashioned the paddles? Was it then that ears sprouted and became the blades of seaplanes? When crossing at night after wind has passed and stars spread on water, you hide there, silent, crouched in pitted granite, still waiting for steady hands to retouch fading colors, to refresh hushed blood. And this one's about the Rice Lake Serpent Mound, which is on Rice Lake, a few miles south of Peterborough. I don't know if people have been there or not. Rice Lake Serpent Mound. 200 feet from tip to tail, the serpent bulges, gut bursting to slowly grind its feast of bone. The dead honeycomb and clog this effigy's digestive organs. They sit, resting chins on knees, awaiting future, lifelessly patient. Some wrapped in blankets of bark, others pose with the gestures of life. They reach out to caress the cheeks of husbands, wives, and daughters. True to kind, the clutch-bound snake opens wide to dislocate bony jaws, a yawn broad enough to swallow the ovum as if it were earth. Inside this ersatz egg's shell of clay, more dead are folded up like fetuses. One holds silver pipes we've named for Pan, the argent ore mined far up the Ottawa. When will this piper play his tune? Wake these late sleeping dead, crack open the spell that forgetfulness lay on the lost and buried peoples of Cahokia, Adena, and Hopewell. When will that child, hearing the call, reach down and pick up her marbles, the ones that she had thought lost, and begin to play once again, fingering over interlocked designs of tadpole and frog, eye and sun, claws and palm? Okay, the next poem is based on a real case of a woman surviving her hanging. Anne Green, 1650, Hawksford. Anne greets visitors from her coffin. They've come to finger lines of ligature around her neck. They ask what she saw and heard, but she does not answer. All she remembers is darkness, choking pain. Her father takes coins into his hands. They still owe the doctors for bloodletting. Despite taunts mocking the goatish flow of her veins, Anne walks the lanes with neck exposed, for her recovery from the noose vindicates her from stain of child murder. Let scholars scoff in their Latin and Greek, she says, for people that day saw the hand of God. They had separated her from earth, alienated her from what gave her strength, but she found a way to get back on her feet, bound her wounds, buried her accusers. Our language, composed of spittle, glower, and bark, our language was not meant to dance to the melodic lines of Uccelli Cantarini. No, it was bred of a core of urban rot for thrust, counter, and right cross. To increase our treasure of discord, we have chivied out and hijacked the word hordes of other tongues, the still wet trophies of hunters' skill. And cheers to my fellow sailors, press-ganged and pea-mal, flung to sea to run amuck in foreign ports of call and become the marks of wise-ass punks, the kun-rak of street courtesan. And all that dealing, contracting, and briskly trading are virulent lexical poxes for those of Calicut, Naples, and Bantam, all that priceless cargo to feed an appetite for pepper and spice. And when we've tongued and swallowed enough of the gobsmacking gobbets of our beloved, despised mongrel argot, we quicken and heave forth our words. Okay, I'm going to finish now with an extended rant. This is about the 401 highway that runs through Toronto. I don't know if anybody's ever driven down it. Probably most of you. It is actually North America's busiest highway. It's something I think as Canadians we should be damn proud of. Or not. Yeah. The 401 series. Filling psychotic sky with drone machinery, speed ceaselessly down endless circuit of highway. The terror never sleeps, never rests. All peripheral understanding cut off by driver's blind need to projectile into future, to move into stream and spin generator of hives hum song. Just as red corpuscles jet sweet O2 through a net of arteries and veins to fire up and stoke cellular combustion, a freeway swarm of cars, school buses, semi-trailers, postal vans, fire trucks, armored cars, floral delivery vans, an endless variation of just-in-time conveyances circulate, tackle, and gear from one serpentine end to other. If life consists of jive and incessant coupling, then this juggernaut is much more fully alive than I. Think not that you remain you when behind the driver's wheel. I've seen chambermaids, pastry chefs, curtain salesmen overcome, thoughtless, impulsive, consumed by mind rays of beltway and byway. Like the harrowing towers of Manhattan that dwarf spectators into insignificance, this hub of millionoid mass transit makes me entirely besides the point. Am I, appendix, an anachronistic organ of this organism, nervously awaiting the inevitability of appendectomy? A man with bared teeth shuffles along asphalt. His dreads flap in smutty wind as his Ford Fiesta alights in the passing lane. The greasy smoke of diesel fire boils up in a miasma-obscured sky. A sacrificial offering of charred bones. And behind blockage, traffic builds. Cars and emergency vehicles crushed into immobile regiments that spew exhaust through open mouths. As doped-up oracles of Delphi inhaled toxic smoke belch from inmost discs, I cannot avoid breathing this opiate fog. When the 401 speaks to me with maggoty tendrils of crosstown transit, it tongues an advert fresh and cherry ripe. gain insight through amputation. Ahead, brake lights flare in an uneven row as rubbernecking drivers slow to trigger unholy chain of near collisions and panic squeals. Now we're all blocked up, backed up, and nowhere to go. It's the nightmare of Santa Monica Expressway all over again, except Dorothy isn't in the States no more. And look around. A chemical implosion behind drivers starting rabbit eyes. Good God, they're raving blind insane. Can anything live in this wasteland of steel, concretion, and layers of crushed stone? The infernal motor drone, day in, day out, is inimical to the life and breath biotic and drives unfortunates who press up against the cemented honeycombs to cast away the crumbs of longing. And I can't believe it. We're moving again. Oh, sweet freedom, oh, sweet delight. The open liberation of road gapes before me as the great flying beasts wing their goony ways into Pearson to cast jumbo shadows over Macadam. The volume of traffic swells once more with foul burst of tin-plated vinyl, speeding through alleys of collision. An Astrovan shears across my lane, its rear windows duct taped shut with garbage bags that ripple in the blast. To my right, a concrete mixer, huge, squat as mobile bunker, jigs up and down on lubricated shocks like machine obscenity. Oh, I'm disgusted, but my lawless eyes are drawn back again and again to that jiggling, wingling transom. Insomniacs of Markham, Pickering, Ajax. Can you hear this banshee scream? Can you hear her gag on her own effluvia in one final spasm of autoerotic asphyxia? Choke me off, honey. Choke me off. And now we're all going fast, 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 and moving freely now, making good time. The edges of pavement blur with speed, and my slurred speech becomes drunkenly. And I feel not at all one with the road, but veer on edge of loss of control between convulsion, blood clot, and stroke. Is this it, buddy? Is this your life? This parade of shitboxes roaring past? A stampede of glittering metal logos on candy-coated hoods of cars, more emblem than human being, long ago consumed by commercial fakery, seduced by the siren call of Barracuda, Sunfire, Comet. Thank you.